there's a lot of people I want to blame for the result yesterday in the Detroit Lions losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 20-16 after being 8-point favorites, 7 8-point favorites, depending on what sports book you use. But the reality is there are people to blame, and there are reasons to be optimistic, which I will get to later. But to start, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Who would you blame? Because I have a lot of notes that I took during the game and post-game. I rewatched the game, and one thing just continues to stick out to me. There's different angles you could go with this, and I think it's healthy to have a conversation of, where I'm at with it, where you guys are at with it, and we'll discuss this more on tonight's show, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. But we'll start how the game really began, and you get to the first quarter. The opening drive, the Bucs take it down the field with the help of a Terran Arnold pass interference, but the defense holds. Aiden Hutchinson, big sack, forces a fumble. Bucs have to settle for a field goal. So it's like, oh, this is awesome. Even though the Bucs looked like they had an opportunity there to score a touchdown, they leave with 3. I thought the defense played extremely well on Sunday, extremely. And I thought the first 2 games of the season, although the first game against the Rams, everyone freaking out over Matthew just feeding the guys on out routes. The defense as a whole, despite some, mistakes here and there, especially from a rookie corner, 3 PIs now in 2 games, defense has looked way better. Like, there is no doubt in my mind this defense is trending in the right direction. It's odd that the offense is struggling to get there. It just is. The offense is just bad. And we've seen that for 2 games now, at home, by the way. But that drive happens. Hutch, big sack, forced fumble, Bucs recover it, kick a field goal. Lions first drive, boom. That's when things started to get, okay, this is how it's going to go. Goff interception. And it was a bad interception. I mean, I rewatched the play multiple times. I went back and watched. Goff, it wasn't like Goff was under this insane amount of duress. I mean, it was mild pressure. It was a situation in which Goff, we've seen him complete passes. Like, it's not like, oh, well, Goff was just pressured. No, I've seen Goff have completions in that same scenario. This time, for whatever reason, missed Jameson Williams over the middle. It was a pretty bad miss. Picked off by Zion McCollum, who actually came off. He was on concussion protocol and ended up playing in the game. So looking at how the Lions started the game, it's like, okay, defense gets a big stop, or at least they hold the Bucs to a field goal. Lions trot out there. Boom. Interception from Jared Goff. Now the defense is in a tough predicament again. So now you're like, well, we forced them to a field goal offense. Can't get anything going, throws an interception. Now it's the defense's job to get the Bucs off the field. I mean, they hold them to 3 again. So now it's 6-0. Like, you're still in this game thanks to the defense. Now you're not playing complimentary football, but the defense is helping the offense, which last year it seemed like the offense was always helping the defense. So I guess if you're looking at it in a positive way, it is nice to see the defense hold their own. They hold the Bucs to a field goal. Bucs go up 6-0, and then the Lions get out there and get a field goal. So this first half overall was not pretty at all. Not pretty. I mean, I think the end of the first half it was 6-6, or 13-6, excuse me, because the Bucs scored a touchdown. So 13-6 at halftime. It's like, okay, it's ugly. Lions are playing like trash, but to see it in a positive light, they're only down a touchdown. So Lions are still in this thing. Now, here's where it got extremely frustrating. And this is just one part of the game. And this is an angle that you can take if you so choose. And I'll explain where I'm coming from with it. Dan Campbell running out the field goal unit with like 5 seconds left. In the offense, Jared Goff goes to spike the ball. Too many men on the field. Field goal unit's literally walking out. And there's the 10-second runoff, end of halftime. So you would have been in a position, if you spike it, you get the field goal. Now you only need 3 at the end of the game to win. So that was huge. But here's where I'll give Dan credit, and this is where I'm going with it. He came after the game and said, hey, that's my fault. And he took accountability for it all. He didn't even out anybody, which I don't expect Dan to. He never does. He always takes accountability for those types of things. And to be quite honest with you, I don't even think that's the reason why they lost. So I'm not even going that angle. I think Dan, if you go top 3 reasons, he's third to me. Dan Campbell, despite that being a bad error, the Lions had multiple opportunities to win that game, regardless of the 3 points they missed out on. And I'll talk about that in a second here, because it's definitely on the offensive side of the ball. So you go into the second half. Now the game, at least in the third quarter struggles narrative, Lions score in their first 2 drives, field goal, touchdown. The Bucs do match with a touchdown, so it puts the game at 20-16. It's 20-16 with two in the third quarter, roughly 20-16. That's how the game ended. You lost 20-16. The offense had no life, no pulse. After that touchdown, punt, interception, downs. Those were the 4 possessions after that touchdown. They scored 10 coming out of halftime. And I'll say it again. Punt, interception, downs. The Bucs, punt. After the touchdown they responded with, after the Lions scored a touchdown. So the Bucs offense couldn't do anything either. And that's credit to the Lions defense. They kept the Lions in it. The offense just wouldn't take it. And you want to go the Goff angle on this? You want to go the Ben Johnson angle on this? Because both, I think, there's plenty to blame. There's plenty of blame to go around. If I had to give you guys 3 reasons why the Lions lost this game, it's very simple. Number 1, I'm going with Ben Johnson. Number 2, I'm going with Jared Goff. And number 3, I'm going with Dan Campbell. And here's why. I'll start with Ben Johnson. The play calling, too cute. And this has been at least a huge storyline with Ben, where there'll be games where you look at the play calling and you're thinking, wow, offense is efficient. He's the best OC in the game. And then there's other games, and I'm a huge Ben Johnson guy. Been a huge Ben Johnson guy since he was the passing game coordinator, and they didn't even promote him yet. But here's the reality. Vita Vea's out of the football game after halftime. And Jared Goff ends the game with 55 pass attempts in a 4-point game. What? What are we doing? Goff had 55 pass attempts. He was 34, I believe. 34 of 55 in a 4-point game. 4. They weren't down 3 scores, because then it'd be a different story. It's like, well, Goff, you gotta throw us to a victory here. You can't run the ball. They started running the ball well, and he still was trying. Goff was still dropping back. And even if you want to bring up, okay, well, the protection wasn't the greatest, I would, at times, sure. But Ben Johnson should have been ahead of that. Like the screen passes, I absolutely hate those plays, personally. I don't know where you guys at. Screen passes, I absolutely hate. They never gain anything from them anyway. So sometimes I'm looking at these pads, I'm like, dude, what are we doing? That's one part, though. But why get away from the run? You just saw in overtime against the Rams, who have a pretty good defensive line. It's young, but they stormed down the field in overtime with just David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, mostly David Montgomery, and won that football game. And you learn absolutely nothing heading into this game. Now, I'll even admit, the path to victory for me was with Jared Goff's arm, because of the front 7 for the Buccaneers, and I figured, you know what, Lions are going to struggle to run the football. I didn't have on my bingo card that Vita Vea would leave the game. That changes everything for me. And once that happened, Ben Johnson, the best play caller on the offensive side of the ball as an OC in the game, has to make that adjustment. It's very simple. You look, okay, this massive human being, Kalijah Kancey's already out, by the way. We got to run the football here. The offensive line's healthy. Both your backs are healthy. You have the best backfield in the NFL. Utilize them. Then at that point on, like, they should have been pounding the football. And I know the red zone was just absolutely a disaster, because I think in the red zone, and I have to double check the percentages, but they were awful in the red zone. Let me get this. Red zone, they were 1 for 7. 1 for 7. So, yeah, that doesn't help either. But not having Vita Vea in the game, or Kalijah Kancey, I don't care. Yes, injuries to the secondary, I understand that. But that frustrates me. So Ben Johnson, the play calling was not great. You should never have Goff dropping back 55 times unless you're down multiple scores. Never. Like, that is malfeasance. So Ben Johnson, to me, is number 1. Number 2 is Goff. Yeah, the execution was just terrible. The timing, he just looked off in general. And that's why I put Ben number 1, because he shouldn't be dropping back 55 times anyway. Like, that's not his game. That's not something ideally. Like, the Bucs saw that and said, great, we love that. Have him drop back 55. We'll take that. We will live with that. We're okay with that, because they had 2 turnovers. So, and honestly, Goff could have had more. But again, yeah, Goff didn't play well, but he should have been passing the ball 55 times. He shouldn't have been dropping back 55 times. So you got to look to the guy who's calling those plays. Like, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it. So yeah, Goff deserves blame. Ben Johnson deserves blame. Dan Campbell deserves blame. Now, if you want to do like a pie chart, I'm not going to give you percentages, but I think it should be Ben Johnson 1, Jared Goff 2, and Dan Campbell 3. Where are you guys at? There's no excuse for how that offense ended the game. Those last 4 possessions, you had every opportunity to win it. Even though the debacle before halftime and not getting 3 points, yeah, that could have changed things, but the Lions should have scored regardless. 1 for 7 in the red zone. And they have a tough opponent next week. Not, a great team, but a team that's going to be scrappy and a team that's at home in the Cardinals, who they want to beat the Lions. This will be huge for them. Huge for Jonathan Gannon, Kyler Murray. So they got to lock in here. I brought up a statistic last week that teams that start 1-1 or 1-2 over the last, almost 8 years, since 2017, I brought up the teams that were in the Super Bowl. Every team that I found, it was either Mahomes, Tom Brady, which they typically won the Super Bowl most of the time, or Nick Foles. Oh, and then there's Joe Burrow, who lost the Super Bowl. But the teams that won the Super Bowl. So it's Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and Nick Foles since 2017. And Nick Foles, I would say, more so an exception. So it's not like, oh, yeah, we'll get it. We'll peak late. You want to peak late, but you got to win these games now. Vikings are 2-0 in your division. Like, you got to beat the Cardinals next week. Okay, you move up to 2-1. We'll see what happens with the Vikings. But even if they drop one, they'll be tied with you at that point. And who would have thought the Vikings would be kind of decent? That was on me for not seeing that one. But it's go time for the Lions. And I do think, and I say all that to say this. Am I hitting the panic button? No, I'm not. I think Jared Goff will bounce back next week against his Cardinals defense. I just do. And I think Ben Johnson will be better. Dan Campbell will be better. Like, this is still a very good football team. This is a top 2, top 3 football team in the NFL. Or top 1, wherever you want to put them. They're in that mix. So, yeah. Am I going to be pissed off? Absolutely. And I hope you guys are too. But is it time to hit the panic button and say this is the SOL, same old Lions? Absolutely not. And whoever's doing that, please tell them. Lock in. And stop overreacting. All right? And stop panicking over one game. I think they dropped last year. They dropped the game to Seattle at home. I think that was week 2. But guys, there's no reason to say the season's over. Like, even though there's plenty to blame for that game specifically. And Ben Johnson has to be better. So is Jared Goff, and so does Dan Campbell. But I believe they will. So that's my takeaway, guys. Like, it's a bad loss, but it's a loss that does humble the Lions, and I think will lead them to bounce back next game. So I think it'll end up being a great thing in the end. Where are you guys at with it, man? Am I crazy? Are you guys with me? Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. And by the way, tune in tonight because we'll talk more in depth. 2 hours worth of content discussing this game here on Crunch Time Sports. You guys have a blessed day, and I'll catch you.